Am I the bad guy for not letting a stranger use my toilet? So picture this. I'm in my late 20s, living in a bustling urban area where public restrooms are as rare as a unicorn. I'm just about to step into my apartment when a stranger approaches me. He looks like an ordinary guy, maybe around my age, and he asks if he can use my bathroom. Now, I don't know about you, but the thought of letting someone I don't know into my private space is a bit unsettling. I politely declined his request. Even when he offered me $5, it just didn't feel right to me. Afterward, I felt a twinge of guilt. I mean, here's this guy in need, and I turned him away. It's not something I've ever encountered before, and it really caught me off guard. As I reflect on it now, I'm left wondering if I would handle a similar situation differently in the future. Was I wrong for saying no? What would you have done?
Am I the bad guy for saying I don't care about my sister's rejection-sensitive dysphoria and will be having my wedding the way I want it? I recently got engaged, and while I should be basking in the joy of this new chapter, I find myself caught in a whirlwind of family drama. My fiancé and I have been together for 2 years, and we both agreed that we want a simple wedding. Coming from large families, the thought of a big, extravagant event filled with stress and costs just doesn't appeal to us. Our plan is to head to City Hall, sign the papers, and then enjoy a nice dinner with a small group of our closest family and friends. I thought my family would understand our decision, especially since my sister had a massive wedding 3 years ago, which I was grateful to miss while stationed abroad. Watching it on a live stream was enough for me. I could feel the stress just from hearing about the planning. So when it came time to discuss our wedding, I assumed they would respect our desire for something low-key. However, my sister had other ideas. She was upset that she wouldn't be my fiancé's maid of honor, and honestly, we aren't even having a wedding party. My fiancé wants her own sister in that role, and I didn't think my sister would take it personally. She also seemed to expect some special title as the sister of the groom, which I've never seen at any wedding. To add to the complexity, my sister has ADHD and something called rejection-sensitive dysphoria, which means she takes feelings of rejection really hard. Despite my parents sending her to therapy in the past, she still struggles with these feelings. When I told her that we weren't having any special roles in our wedding, she felt rejected. And that's when the pressure from my family began. My parents and brother-in-law started pushing me to reconsider our plans, insisting that I should accommodate my sister's feelings. I found myself growing increasingly frustrated. It felt like everything revolved around her emotions, and I just wanted my wedding day to be about my fiancé and me. In a moment of exasperation, I told my family that I didn't care if my sister felt rejected and that I wouldn't change our plans. I even declared that I was done discussing it and asked them not to bring it up again. Now I'm left wondering if I overstepped. I've never seen my family so upset with me before, and it's made me question if I'm in the wrong for wanting to celebrate our love in the way we envision. I just want to enjoy this special day without the added stress of family drama.
Am I the bad guy for cracking open a beer in front of Mill after she tried humiliating my dad for drinking? My mother-in-law is quite the character when it comes to alcohol. Honestly, I'm not sure where her strong opinions come from. There aren't any alcoholics in the family, and she isn't religious, so it's a bit of a mystery. Some of her kids think it's a control issue, but who really knows? What I do know is that she constantly tells my husband that he needs to stop drinking because she fears he'll become an alcoholic. She even goes as far as to suggest that he should control me because I enjoy a drink now and then. Just to clarify, my husband only has a few beers once or twice a month, and he can make a six-pack last for weeks. One day, she found out I was having my dad over for dinner after a chat with my husband. She decided to show up unannounced, thinking it would be a fun surprise. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. As my dad and I were chatting in the kitchen, enjoying a few beers, she walked in and immediately made a face at my dad. I noticed her reaction, but my husband and dad were blissfully unaware. After about half an hour, my dad grabbed another beer, and that's when she decided to speak up. She said something like, "Don't you think you've had enough? I'm very uncomfortable with you drinking around me. It's rude." At that moment, I felt a surge of defiance. I grabbed a beer for myself and started drinking it while locking eyes with her. As she gathered her things to leave, she muttered something about how she couldn't have a nice dinner with her son. I watched her walk out, feeling a mix of satisfaction and mischief. My husband, however, looked at me with raised eyebrows, shook his head, and excused himself to the bedroom. The atmosphere turned awkward, and my dad left shortly after. When I tried to discuss it with my husband, he called me childish and said that if I had just given him a moment, he would have handled his mother. But honestly, when she was cornering my dad, my husband was just sitting there, staring at the ground with his hands in his pockets. I waited at least 30 seconds before grabbing that beer, and he hadn't said a word. Plus, she wasn't even invited. My dad was. Now I'm left wondering if I was in the wrong for my little act of rebellion, or if I was just standing up for my dad. What do you think? Am I the bad guy for telling my husband to leave me alone while I was in the hospital? I want to keep this as anonymous as possible, so I'll skip the specifics. I'm in my early 20s, and my husband is in his early 30s. We've been married for about a year and weren't actively trying for a baby, but we do want kids eventually. About a month and a half ago, I started experiencing symptoms that I thought were just a urinary tract infection. It sounds silly now, but I had cramps and some burning sensations. After 2 weeks of discomfort, I woke up one night with crippling pain. I realized I couldn't even drive myself to the hospital, so my husband took me. It turned out I was having an ectopic pregnancy that had ruptured. I was completely blindsided. I hadn't even known I was pregnant. After surgery, I ended up with sepsis and spent about 3.5 weeks in the hospital. It was an incredibly shocking experience. I was devastated about losing a baby I hadn't planned for, but would have loved. And on top of that, I was in pain and miserable in the hospital. I've never struggled with anxiety before, but I think it hit me hard while I was in the ICU. The doctors offered medication for my anxiety, but my husband, who is oddly against medication for such issues, advised me not to take it. One particularly rough night. I was overwhelmed with anxiety and fear about everything, losing one of my fallopian tubes and the thought that I might never have a baby again. My husband was by my side, but he wasn't providing the comfort I needed. When a nurse came in and noticed my elevated heart rate, she suggested the anxiety medication again. I finally agreed to it, but once the nurse left, my husband started lecturing me about how I didn't need more medication and should just focus on calming my breathing. After an hour of bickering, I snapped and told him to leave me alone. He looked shocked and offended and ended up leaving the hospital completely, not returning until the next night. When he came back, he was still upset and told me I shouldn't have shut him out of the conversation. I was so upset that I let him lecture me again. That was a few weeks ago, and he hasn't brought it up since, but I'm still feeling hurt about the whole situation. I can't help but wonder if I was in the wrong for asking him to leave me alone during such a vulnerable moment.